Hey everyone, ready to explore something that feels like it's ripped right from science fiction. But get this, it's happening right now in our cities.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, huh?
We're talking about autonomous cities.
Cities that think for themselves.
Whoa, okay, so picture a city that manages everything, like, I don't know,
Traffic lights,
exactly, or even,
like energy grids,
yeah,
all using data and algorithms.
it's like, okay, this is a weird analogy, but like
Mhm.
the human
Oh,
body,
yeah, I know where you're going with this.
it's like our nervous system, how it just reacts to things, keeps everything running smoothly.
Precisely. It's taking that concept and scaling it up to a whole city.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. So to make sure we cover everything, we've got a bunch of articles, research reports,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, I picked your brain for a while too.
Haha. Always happy to share.
So for this deep dive, what's the mission? What are we hoping to uncover today?
All right, let's break it down. We're going to untangle the promises of these autonomous cities.
The shiny, futuristic promises.
Exactly. But we also got to look at the potential downsides. It's often presented as this cure-all for urban
Oh
problems.
yeah, I've seen the headlines, like no more traffic jams.
Yeah, end to wasted energy.
City's so safe, you can walk alone at night.
Right. But there's always that nagging question.
Like, is it all too good to be true?
Exactly. What's the catch? What are we sacrificing for all this supposed utopia?
Okay, I'm hooked. So let's start with the positives, the problems these smart cities are actually trying to solve.
All right, well, our sources highlight a few big ones. Imagine a city where traffic flows smoothly because AI is constantly adjusting, optimizing routes.
Oh, based on like real-time traffic conditions.
Precisely, no more rush hour nightmares.
Okay, I could get used to that.
And think about energy. So much is wasted because, well, buildings aren't as efficient as they could be. Smart cities could optimize all that.
So shorter commutes, lower energy bills. Sign me up. You mentioned safety too. How does that factor in?
Well, think about it. If a city is equipped with sensors, cameras, constantly collecting data,
It's always watching.
in a way, yes. But the idea is it could detect incidents much faster, respond more efficiently.
And that deters crime.
Potentially, yes. Some experts argue it could create a safer environment overall.
So less crime, smoother commutes, a greener city. This does sound pretty utopian, but I guess that's where the but comes in, right?
Yeah, there's always a but. The big question is, what's the price we pay for all these benefits?
And I think we both know the answer.
Data.
Data.
An autonomous city needs massive amounts of it to function. We're not talking about just knowing traffic volume.
It's about knowing where you are, what you're doing.
Maybe even your heart rate
Wait, seriously?
or your facial expressions.
Look, facial expressions, that's getting a little creepy.
It is, isn't it? Why would a city need to know that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to find out.
Well, the argument is it could be used to gauge people's reactions. Like, are they happy with public services? Do they like certain advertisements?
Okay, so it's all about manipulating us.
Right. Potentially, yes. And that raises those huge privacy concerns.
No kidding. So even if the city isn't, like, actively spying on me, the fact that they could, it's unsettling. What do our sources say about the potential for misuse of all this data?
Well, it really boils down to trust. Who are we entrusting with this data? The source points out that governments could use it for surveillance.
Big Brother is watching.
Right, and potentially tracking citizens' movements, activities in ways that, infringe on civil liberties.
Not cool. Okay, so Big Brother is one concern. What about corporations? They're the ones building a lot of this technology, aren't they?
Absolutely. And that adds another layer of complexity. Our sources discuss how tech companies could use this data for commercial gain.
So targeted ads?
Oh, yeah, for sure, but also potentially influencing behavior in subtler ways.
It's like they could be shaping our choices without us even realizing it.
Precisely.
That's a bit scary, don't you think? It's not just the government, it's corporations potentially having this massive influence over our lives.
It's a question of control, really. Who sets the rules in an autonomous city?
Is it elected officials? A people we can actually hold accountable?
Or is it algorithms designed by companies with their own agendas?
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
Like, we could end up living in a city run by code where the rules are, dictated by algorithms, not human values.
And this brings us to another crucial point from the source, the potential for bias.
Oh, yeah, I've read about this. Like those algorithms that are supposed to predict crime.
But end up unfairly targeting certain neighborhoods or groups of people?
Exactly.
It's a huge concern. Any algorithm that makes decisions about resources, services, or even how public spaces are designed could perpetuate inequalities if it's not carefully designed.
So we've got government surveillance, corporate manipulation, algorithmic bias.
Mm,
Maybe those traffic jams aren't so bad after all. But I guess the real question is, can we mitigate these risks?
that's the million-dollar question. And it's one that our source material tackles head on. The source suggests that responsible development is key. We need to think about ethics from the very beginning.
So it's not just about building cool tech and hoping for the best.
Not at all. We have to think about the human consequences before we unleash it on the world.
Okay, so more transparency, more accountability. But I'm still hung up on this idea of a city that's always collecting data. What happens to freedom in that kind of environment?
That's where things get really interesting. Our source asks, what happens to dissent in an autonomous city? Think about protests.
Yeah.
Even just voicing unpopular opinions online, those could all be flagged by a system designed to maintain order.
It's like the city itself is always watching, always listening.
Mm.
And what happens if the system decides your opinion or your gathering is a threat? Does it just shut you down?
That's the fear. The very technologies designed to keep us safe could be used to stifle dissent.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The system predicts a disruption, so it takes steps to prevent it, which then confirms the prediction, and it's all happening without any real human oversight.
It's a chilling thought, and it highlights the need for strong legal frameworks, ethical guidelines. We need to make sure these technologies are used responsibly.
Okay, so we need laws, we need ethics, but even with the best intentions, these systems are still vulnerable to hacking, right? Anything connected to the internet can be hacked.
Absolutely, that's a major concern. Our source calls it the Achilles heel of the autonomous city.
Because if someone can hack the traffic system, the power grid,
Even the security systems,
the consequences could be disastrous.
it could be chaos. The source really paints a vivid picture of what could happen if a bad actor got control of a city's infrastructure. Widespread blackouts, transportation shutdowns, emergency services disrupted.
So it's like putting all our eggs in one basket and then realizing the basket has a giant hole in it.
Exactly. The interconnectedness that makes these cities so efficient also makes them incredibly vulnerable. It's a trade-off we need to be very aware of.
So we've got government overreach, corporate influence, algorithmic bias, and now cybersecurity threats. I gotta be honest, I'm starting to feel a little pessimistic about this whole thing. Is there anything about this that isn't terrifying?
Well, remember, technology itself is neutral. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. Our source does offer some potential solutions, ways to mitigate these risks.
Okay, I'm listening. Give me some hope here.
One key idea is decentralization. Instead of having all the data and control in the hands of a few.
We spread it out more.
Exactly. More like a network of interconnected systems, not one central brain controlling everything. That way, if one part is compromised, the whole city doesn't crash, and it makes it harder for any one entity to control everything.
Makes sense. What else?
Transparency is also crucial. The more we understand how these algorithms work, how the data is being used.
The more we can hold people accountable.
Exactly. No more black boxes, no more secret algorithms, open source software, public audits, clear data privacy policies. These could all help build trust.
It sounds like we need a whole new rule book for this new kind of city.
Mm.
Rules that put human rights, privacy, and democratic values first.
Absolutely. And it's not just about governments and corporations setting those rules. It's about citizens being informed, engaged, and demanding these technologies serve the common good.
So what does that look like in practice?
Mm.
What can everyday people do to actually shape the future of their cities?
It starts with awareness. The more you understand about these technologies, the better equipped you are to make informed choices.
Okay, so read up on autonomous cities, learn about the pros and cons.
And then get involved. Go to city council meetings, participate in public forums, voice your concerns, and advocate for policies that align with your values.
So it's not just about being informed, it's about taking action.
Exactly. The future of our cities isn't set in stone. It's something we create together through our choices and actions.
That's a powerful thought. So even though this all seems daunting, maybe even a little scary,
It is.
we're not just passive passengers here. We can actually steer the course.
We can and we must. The choices we make today determine the world we live in tomorrow.
Wow. I gotta say, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I started this thinking about flying cars and robots, but it's so much deeper than that.
It really is. We're not just talking about shiny new tech. It's a whole new way of life, a new relationship between humans and the city itself.
And a whole new set of challenges we've never dealt with before. It's like we're building the plane as we're flying it, hoping we figure out how to land before we run out of fuel.
Haha, that's a great analogy. And it really highlights why thoughtful planning is so crucial. We can't just wander blindly into this future. We need a vision. What do we want our cities to be? How can technology help us get there?
Okay, so let's talk about that vision. Let's say you, the listener, are suddenly in charge of designing a smart city. What's the one thing you'd prioritize? What would make sure it benefits the people who live there?
For me, it all comes back to human-centered design. Everything, from the buildings to the digital systems, should be designed with people in mind. Their needs, their rights, their well-being.
I love that human-centered design. It's a good reminder that technology should empower people, not control them.
Exactly. We need to be asking, does this tech make people's lives better? Or does it restrict their freedom? Does it build community, or does it create isolation and surveillance?
Those are really important questions to keep in mind. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the future isn't set in stone. The future of our cities, it's something we create through our choices, through our actions.
It's not just about being informed, it's about doing something with that knowledge.
Exactly. Whether it's going to those city council meetings or voting for candidates who prioritize ethical technology, even just talking to your friends and family about these issues.
Having those conversations.
Right. Every action, big or small, can make a difference.
So we need to be both vigilant and hopeful. Vigilant about the potential risks, but hopeful that we can use this technology to create cities that are truly sustainable, equitable, livable for everyone.
I couldn't have said it better myself. The future is in our hands, and it starts with awareness, engagement, and a commitment to putting human values first.
Well, this has been a fascinating and at times kind of scary journey into the world of autonomous cities. We've covered a lot, but this conversation is far from over.
Absolutely. We encourage you, our listeners, to keep exploring this topic, ask questions, challenge assumptions, and be a part of shaping the future of your city and the world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.